Second book of Samuel, chapters 13 to 18 today, and we open with a chap called Amnon, who is one of King David's sons. A bit of a weirdo. He fancies his sister, that old chestnut again. We're having that kind of weird day. But unfortunately, even worse than that, he decides he's going to force himself upon said sister. And then even worse than that, it seems, in biblical terms, he then decides actually he doesn't fancy her at all anymore and wants nothing to do with her, so seems to therefore leave her in some sort of disgrace for it. It's like it could have been redeemed if he'd actually treated her properly afterwards or something. Not sure. Either way, Amnon, absolutely awful human being. Amnon's brother, Absalom, there's a reason for it, but he waits 2 years and then he kills Amnon for having done this. And you're kind of left with, well, I'm sort of all right with that because you were a total punk, and I think it's good news that he's out of the Bible. Absalom then, however, has to basically goes off into hiding for the next 3 years for having killed his brother. After those 3 years, there's a chap called Joab who goes to get some lady who doesn't have a name, even though she's very wise, sends her to David, basically telling him a story about how someone's after her son for killing her other son. David, this time at least, seems to see through this and realise that this is being directed at him, takes the point and brings Absalom back, and eventually it seems that they become, well, not friends I suppose, but they get on. It seems to be going okay. Trouble is, it then turns out that Absalom's a bit of a punk as well, and he starts manoeuvring things to gain power for himself, and it escalates to the point where suddenly David's fleeing the city because he reckons Absalom's about to attack it and kill him. It seems that this is correct as well. There's an odd bit in here that David was quite happy to leave the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem, just content that if God wills it, that he will come back and see it again. That's all good. I mean, so could you not have taken it with you? Maybe that would have been a good idea. It's a bit of an odd attitude to take to it, I think. One of David's advisors pretends to be on Absalom's side and stays with him. So Absalom then has two advisors giving him conflicting advice on how he should treat David in terms of going to get him and kill him or basically leave him alone. The advisor that's actually working for David doesn't have his advice taken, so he reports what's going to happen to David, which does turn out to be significant, but then goes home and hangs himself. It's a little bit extreme when someone doesn't take your advice. But there we go. Thanks to this chap who told David what's happening, though, it all goes completely wrong for Absalom. He gets loads of his men killed and then meets a very odd end when he's toddling along on a donkey. Apparently he's got very long hair. He gets his hair stuck in a tree because apparently scrunchies hadn't been invented yet or something. And the donkey just carries on going and he sort of slides off the back and he's dangling there from his hair. And this Joab chap who sent the lady to speak to David comes along and goes, brilliant, and just shoves some spears in him and kills him, that's it. So they then take him down and throw him in a hole and cover him in rocks. And you kind of think, well, yeah, fine with that too, because he was also a total punk. David then mourns, which I guess is fair enough, given that's his son. But, I don't know, there ought to be some sort of recognition for the terribleness of people. And David's not great on that, is he? He mourned for Saul, even though he kept trying to kill him. And I don't know, maybe he's just a particularly good person, other than the wife-stealing business. So in the short version of that, we basically just have a sort of relatively short, family-inspired civil war that needn't have happened at all, but then we have again David wins, as seems to be his thing. As clearly God is with him in that sense, that no matter what happens, he's dealing with it and holding his position. There's a couple of interesting points to pull out from that. One of them is one of the things that the lady that Joab said. It's a very wise thing, which she says that God devises ways so that a banished person does not remain banished from him. This lady doesn't even have a name and she's saying stuff like that. That feels like it's deeply profound. I'm not sure I fully understand it. Or I definitely don't fully understand it. But I like that idea. It sort of echoes with the idea of the Book of Judges, where no matter what the Israelites did, God always gave them another chance. It does seem to suggest that no matter what you do, God is not going to give up on you. You're still going to try. There's definitely a limit to that, in the sense that we've had people that God has just set fire to for doing jars the wrong way, sort of thing. So I don't know what that limit is or anything else, but it's a nice idea, isn't it? That I guess no one is beyond redemption, maybe. But it's an interesting idea, certainly. The other point was that David, his weird trustingness in terms of, oh, I won't worry about the Ark of Covenant, just leave it there, and if God wants me to come back, I'll do it. And I was like, okay. But it reminds me of that, the story of the person who's on the roof of their house and the floodwaters are rising and a boat turns up and then a helicopter turns up and the person turns them away and says, no, it's okay, God will save me, and then gets to heaven and says, I sent you a boat and a helicopter, what the hell was wrong with you? And it's there's got to be a point at which you've got to do something. You can't just be a complete passenger and I'm just going to wake up this morning and see what God wants me to do, and God then doesn't talk to you, because I don't think anyone thinks that's really a thing, do they? Maybe they do. But yeah, I don't. In the absence of some clarity in terms of today you need to go and do this, at some point you've got to take responsibility for what you're going to do. And being overthrown and being the leader of a kingdom, maybe it would be assumed that your responsibility would be to secure the most important relic in the whole of the empire, or whatever it is. I don't know. It's an interesting one, but David is a strange guy, humongously righteous in some ways, humongously terrible in others, and just does weird things. But yeah, never mind. We'll move on anyway and see if we can learn a bit more from what comes next.